Catherine, thank you for coming to see us for your session on Saturday. So we worked on backstroke and breaststroke. Let's take a look at your backstroke first. So this is your first length of the session that we filmed. So this is your before video, full stroke from over water. So you can see we've got some nice sort of body rotation there. I feel like we could get some more power into that rotation. I feel like we're almost going through the motions. And I feel like we could almost grab more water as well. We could get a stronger catch. Let's have a look at that length in a little bit more detail. So as we're on the push-off, underwater phase, great streamlined position, well done. Eyes are looking up at this point, which is great. Keep that core nice and tight, okay? Don't let that wiggle. As we come to the surface, though, you can see we lift the head. So we want to be on that green arrow rather than the orange to keep ourselves a little bit more level and flat so that we're efficient as we break out. So that would mean not going quite so deep on the underwater phase. As we're kicking, one of the things you said your coaches had said to you was that we knee kick a little bit. And that this is true. I think what we want to think about is trying to push the straight leg down in the water and keep your kick a bit smaller and sharper as well. So really use your bum muscle to drive that leg backwards. What we're doing with the hands is reaching back. So this is all to do with your timing, which we will come on to a little bit more. But we tend to kind of want to overreach with the wrist and the hand. And I think this is where we're slicing the water and then losing that catch at the top. In terms of the timing, what we want to be on is a 2/3 catch up. But what you can see here is that we're at opposite ends of the stroke. Okay, we're top and bottom, or we're up and we're down. Okay, so we want to basically, with the pulling arm, catch that lead arm up so that you're 2/3 of the way around your stroke before you start to pull with the arm that's in the water. Okay, now one of the things that this affects is your height in the water. We tend to drop, which means we do that big leg kick and that big cycle again with the legs to try and push ourselves back up. And because we're not getting hold and grasp of the water as good as we could do, it means that we're slipping, and again we're losing that height and control in the water. What we want is control and balance. And we also just want to work on measuring our stroke count from the flags into the wall as well. And that comes with practice and a bit of confidence too. So this is the same length actually from the start of the session. So now we're underwater and we're head on. And the main thing I want you to notice from this is the depth of your pull. So we spoke about that quite a bit on the day. You can see that the head is bobbing a little bit. Now I wouldn't say you've got a bobby stroke, but that's just the change in height that we were talking about with not quite having the grasp on the water and just being on and off that timing a little bit. As we said on the previous video, you can see as you break out here, we tend to be very steep. So the lead arm pokes out of the water and the other arm is very, very straight as you pull. Where you want to be as you pull is more on this yellow line here. But you can see we tend to go with a straight arm for a lot longer before getting that elbow bend. Now, like I said, you're getting some hip rotation, but I don't feel like it's doing the driving as much as it could. And what we want to get from hip rotation as well as that power is depth in the catch, okay? And you can see we're very shallow there, which is why we're catching air bubbles on the surface, okay? With the left hand, we tend to actually enter quite wide as well. Now, I don't want you to worry about that too much, but I do want you to think about making sure that the hip rotation and the hip drive is what's taking your hand into the entry, not hand first and then the hips follow. Now, you tend to get a little bit deeper on this left side than you do on the right. I think that is partly to do with the hip rotation. I think it's partly to do with how you're entering as well. But we do tend to, on both sides, go straight into pulling. What I want to do is get a little bit more of a straight reach, get the depth on the catch with that high elbow strong position before you pull. And again, that slight little positioning that you do at the top of the stroke will allow time for you to get that recovery arm out into the 2/3 catch-up position. So this is from the start of the session, but side on. So you can see we're taking a few air bubbles down, particularly with this right hand closest to the camera. And again, that's a mixture of being very close to the surface with the pull, but also pulling straight away rather than giving that time to get into position. Can also see that the bum's a bit dropped. We're a little bit loose through the core, through the middle. So I want you to, as you swim, think about tilting your hips. So we're looking at what we call a posterior tilt of the hips, which means you're sort of tucking your bum under a little bit. And I always say on backstroke, it's as though you want to feel like you're swimming like the shape of a canoe going down your body. So try and sort of tuck that tummy in, tuck those hips, okay, and that will help us be stronger and get the power out of that hip rotation as well. If we look at that length in a little bit more detail, you can see from this underwater angle just how steep we're coming up to the surface. So definitely make that underwater phase shallower. Don't try and aim to go too far on that. We want to make the most of it, not just make it longer. And you can see this position here. It's quite a weak position, isn't it? We're pulling with that straight arm. But at that point, what you really want to be doing is being flatter to the surface and really getting onto that hip rotation so you can get some good depth on that right arm pull, so you're not pulling with a straight arm. We can pull with a high elbow, which is a much stronger position than when you're trying to reach back behind yourself with a straight arm. So as we get into our swim, you can see that you're much better at getting into that position, and from here you look like you're in a great place. But what happens is we tend to just pull very quickly. We don't get that high elbow, so we slice the water and almost do a little bit of an S-shaped pull. So you come up towards the surface, you catch this air, and then you finish on a downwards push. So your arm is then getting stuck behind you. Your hip's trying to come round and come out as you're going to enter with the other arm, and this hand is getting stuck behind you, which makes it really hard to get onto that 2/3 catch-up timing. So the shape we want to look at is the C-shaped pull, remember, which means you can scoop straight out with no pause at the bottom. You can see when we've lost depth in the water here, you can see the water's right around our face. That's when we do that big knee kick and that big bicycle kick, okay? Because we've dropped, so we're trying to get more height. So we do a bigger kick. Think about keeping that kick smaller and consistent, and a little bit of that straight leg again on the way down. Use your bum muscle to really drive a straight leg down to help lift you up. At this point in your stroke, when your hip's on full rotation, you want your arm to be straight out in front of you, ready to catch on that yellow line. But you can see that we'd already pulled a bit too soon there. So part of what we think about is trying to make sure we've got that high elbow catch, but also that we're not just pulling immediately, okay? It's not a pause. It's not like a layout like you have in freestyle at the front, but it just allows your body time to get into that strong position whilst the other arm catches up, before you really get onto your pull, but then you're on a good timing. All right, so the last view we looked at to start with was this aerial view, and I think this shows quite a lot for backstroke as well. So head's nice and still, which is lovely. That's really good. You can see the hips are going, like I said, but I just don't think they're doing as much as they could, okay? We're going through the motions with them rather than really creating that power. What you also get through hip rotation is length in your stroke, but you can see that especially with, I think it's that left arm, we do go very wide. Here you can just see that hand being stuck behind your hip, like I was just talking about on that previous length there. So it makes it hard straight away to get onto that timing we want. But like I've said, the head is nice and still, which is good. When we started trying to do a few of the things, we noticed that crept away and we had to bring it back in with the cup on the head. So be conscious of that. Now, if you notice here, when you go wide on that left arm entry, we're also going quite wide because we're getting stuck on that right arm exit, okay? So they do link in. And what you also notice here is the timing. Like I say, one's high and the other's low. So this is when we drop in the water because there's nothing there to keep us up high in the water. We've got nothing to press on. What you do also notice here is that the arm on the recovery is crossing the body because we're going quite wide. We're sort of windmilling also, almost. And so whereas we'd want to go straight up this yellow line, okay, with the right arm pull that's going to come in a minute, you can see that actually we come across the body quite significantly. So we come with the body rotation and the hip rotation and then back out again. So this could be why we're swinging quite wide as well, because we're coming all the way in first. You can see on this next arm, so we want to follow this yellow line. But what we actually do is come well inside that and then well outside of it afterwards as well. So it's just the axes that you're recovering on that we want to control a little bit more. I feel like we're swinging a little bit, like I say, we're windmilling. So here are some of the drills we did to help work on these things. Looking less stiff
than the previous length with the cup on, so that's good. We've kind of forgotten about the C-shaped pull before. We're getting it back now.
So once we try to get a bit of depth on that pull and incorporate that depth with that hip rotation, we looked at the shape of the pull, which we want to be a C shape, okay? So that means that we're not pressing down at the end of the stroke to the bottom of the pull, we're pushing away towards our feet and there's no pause at all, so we're coming straight out at the bottom. And you can see we're doing quite a good job. I feel like we could get that bit more catch at the top on this left arm here. This is the one where we tend to go wide and scoop straight into a pull even more so. This right one, you look like you're getting into a stronger position. You look like you've got more acceleration through the pull as well, which is what we want. We want the stroke to be at different speeds at different points. So it's slower at the top, but we want fast through the bottom. So we've got to accelerate through that pull. And again, that helps us get onto that 2/3 catch-up timing. With this, we held the paddle rather than wore it because it makes you brace your wrist as well.
Okay, so this is law drill to look at timing. Yeah, people sometimes really struggle with this and end up with their arms in all sorts of places, but you're getting the idea. That one we pulled a bit too early. Just got to remember to keep the kick going, so that's got to be fast, even though your arms are pausing. That can't pause too, otherwise that's where we start sinking, and then we need to bob ourselves back up, and we have to rush to pull again to keep ourselves going. Good first attempt there. Alright, so law drill is to look at the timing. We want to be on 2/3 catch up. Legs are much better here, so the drill is looking much smoother in general. Head is doing a good job as well. We've got no flags in, so Joe's going to be your flags. Oh, good, very nice.
Flags in for you either. Yeah, back.
Alright, so we're doing half a length law drill into half a length full stroke. Just going to have to let you know about the flags. Okay, sorry about that, I don't want to do flags. Okay. Good, legs are doing a much better job. Good, just think about relaxing that hand. We don't need to enter little finger first. Go on to full stroke, that's it. Good.
Apologies for the filming there, we had no flags in.
That's better, thinking about that timing, being on that 2/3 catch-up, trying to keep the head still. C-shape pull under the water. We also want to think about making sure we're not too deep or too shallow on that entry, that catch. Got to get better at using the flags into the wall.
Okay, so here is your after length for backstroke from over the top of the water. So we didn't really work on how steep we were going on that underwater phase. So that's something you can keep thinking about back at home. We did mention in that last video about the hands. So try and relax those. Think about entering back of the hand. But there's no need to twist your hand right round when it's up to the sky there, because it's really tensing your shoulder up. So we want to keep everything as relaxed as possible through the shoulders and the neck. We're getting better on that timing there, but we're still a little bit fast on that top arm / not catching up with the other arm. Okay, so just keep that in mind, 2/3 catch up. You can see that we're getting deeper though, which is good, but just that timing again, just make sure that we're getting that setup time at the top end of the stroke so you can really grab hold of that water with that high elbow. I feel like once you get more strength, you'll notice whether you're getting this better or not. Nice with the hip rotation still though, well done. That is helping you get that depth in the stroke, which is good. And it looks to me like we're getting the idea of the C-shape pull better. We're not pausing at the bottom quite so much. This bit of timing here is much better. That's much closer to 2/3 catch up. And I feel like you're generally a little bit better on one side than the other as well. So the more balanced we can get our stroke, the more symmetrical we can get our stroke, the better. And like Joe said, I think we just need to start working on our stroke count from the flags. We've got the flags in at that point. All right, so this is your after video from head on underwater, and you can see the main thing is the depth. We're not catching quite so many air bubbles, especially on that right hand, because we're not coming as close to the surface on like an up phase of an S-shaped pull, which isn't what we want. Remember, we want the C-shaped pull. We could just have that little bit more time at the top of the stroke, like we've been saying. Really nice streamline again though, just that little bit steep. You can see we don't want that arm to pop out of the water. And we could do with having a little bit more bend, I think, on that elbow. So again, that will help you create more power. The further away you are with your hand from your body, the weaker the position is going to be, okay? So we want to try and get into the strongest position we can. Imagine if you get out of the pool, if you were to get out of a deep pool and lift yourself up, you wouldn't do it with your arms straight because that wouldn't be the strongest way to do it. You'd bend your arms and you'd push through a bent arm there to get yourself up. So it's the same when you're trying to get yourself through the water. Just relax that neck and those shoulders because you can see here your head is going with it. You're on that red line down the middle of your head and we want to be on the green. So it's all about tight through the core, strong through the legs and strong through the catch. But the shoulders and neck whilst we're doing this are very relaxed. That's what we want, okay? If you're tense, it's going to cause fatigue and tiredness. So here you can just see we're reaching back to enter with the little fingers and then we've pushed straight outwards here with a very straight arm. And it's only at this point now that we start to think about bending the arm to really push the water down. So all of that movement from closer to your body, to your head, out to where your hand is now is slipping water, okay? All we've done is push the water sideways here. Whereas remember, to move us forwards, we've got to push the water back towards our feet, okay? So we want to think about how we can be the most efficient and get the most out of our stroke. And that means we don't want to slip at the top of that catch. So high elbow, bent elbow, sooner than what we're doing, but it is going to need to be deep, okay? Nice and deep, and we're doing better at that depth there. Keep the kick a little bit smaller, like I've said, a bit more consistent, straight leg on the way down. And again, that will help you keep that tummy tucked, keep that strong, and keep your height in the water as well. All right, so side on, this is full speed here. You can see what we mean about that leg kick. It occasionally stops as well, but it is doing better than what we did at the start. And I like the acceleration. You've definitely improved the acceleration through the pull. So you're doing a better C shape, some more than others, but it's brand new, so that's what we'd expect. As you're coming into the wall, you can see we just stopped to try and figure out that count again, and that's really throwing you off. You can gain probably over a second there on your backstroke races just by improving that. So you can see here we're very arched through the back because we're steep. We're pulling with that straight arm and the legs are very, very low in the water, okay? So we could neaten that position up much more, get the hips driven on the rotation so you can get depth and a bent arm on that first right arm catch. This is a lovely position here, really, really good. We're getting onto that high elbow much better than we were before, which is good. Again, head looks a little bit better from this angle. We're a little bit close to the surface. I've seen you do better strokes than this one that I've just highlighted. But what I like is that we want the hand to exit the water as the hip exits the water on its rotation. And you're much better at doing that. It's not getting left behind your body now like it was at the start, which, as I say, is going to help you with that 2/3 catch-up timing. So this left arm tends to be the one where you reach back even more, and that's the one where you're very wide on the entry as well. So you can see the fingers pointing backwards. Okay, that's just not getting us into the best position. We're going to end up slipping. But like I've said there, hand is exiting with the hip, which is lovely. Just keep that kick consistent. Try not to bend the knees quite so much. Lifting the legs here would be great. So like we say, that's going to come from tilting the hips, engaging your core, swimming like a canoe, and just not shortening the leg kick, but reducing the size of the leg kick. All right, so when we're reaching back with that left arm, that is when we're losing that balance, we're losing that control in the water, and that's when our kick gets big and wide and cycling, where we're not getting as much out of it, okay? So be conscious of that. If we can keep everything in line and more controlled, everything will just cut through the water so much better, and you will stay higher in the water as well. Great job on backstroke there, Catherine, well done. Let's take a look at breaststroke now. All right, so we didn't have quite so much time on breaststroke, but again, you did a lovely job. Here's your videos from the start of the breaststroke part of the session. So I think you've already got a lovely breaststroke actually. You're really trying to get the undulation in the stroke, which a lot of people of your age don't do. They tend to swim very flat. So that's great, well done. Your timing of your stroke is very good as well. So we're not snatching, we're accelerating through the pull and we're reaching out at the front, which is great. But there are areas that we can work on. So let's look at that length in a little bit more depth now. So again, neatening up. So tighten these legs, squeeze them together off the wall. That's going to help cut you through the water, but it's also going to keep you balanced in the water. One thing we mentioned was just neatening this bit up. So hands on the top of the thighs instead, or on the front of the thighs, so that it tucks everything in and you're like a torpedo through the water. Great job at keeping that head down at this point as you come up to the surface, but as we start to take that first stroke, you'll notice a pop of that head. There it is, and we look forwards, okay? And again, that's like putting the brakes on, you like planting the water with your face there. So when I say you're getting a good undulation, you are, which is lovely, but I feel like we're trying to get it a little bit too much from the head and nodding the head down and pushing that down. What I want you to try and get it from is more of a chest press and keeping the head and the neck a little bit more steady and in line. So the other thing we mentioned was the position of the elbows as you're pulling back. Your pull is there to give you rhythm and control in your stroke, not to pull you forwards down the length quite so much. The kick is there for that more so. So try and keep the elbows in front of the chest, so your arms would be where these yellow lines are now. So your hands would never end up as close to your chest as what you're doing. You almost want to think about squeezing the forearms together and the elbows together in front of your chest. So like you're trying to clap your forearms like a seal, okay? And then when we are reaching forwards, just tighten those hands up. We spoke briefly about just having strong hands, making sure that the fingers are staying, you know, you can have a little gap between them, that's fine. That actually catches more water, but we don't want them moving about and being wriggly, okay? Keep them really strong. The other thing we spoke about was just finishing off the kick, whipping the kick, so don't forget that. Now this is the same length but from head on, underwater. So you can just see when I say about the hands on the end of the last length, you can see we're a little bit wiggly at points at the front. We could just keep those tighter in a V position, ready to start the pull. You do rotate them nicely, but they're just a little bit out of control. And you can probably see that head nod here as well. You're throwing the head down. I want you to press the chest down, which is going to help lift the hips up behind and gain that undulation that you're looking for. So just in that little bit more detail, remember, keep those legs squeezed. You can see it's just sent us a little bit wobbly, but the head position here is great. A lot of people tend to power the pull at this point and dip the head as they do it. So that is a great position, but you can see by not having the hands on the front of the legs, we come up and we make a very big shape. So we're pushing through and against all of the water to get our hands to the front there. So we could try and keep those a bit closer to our body. Here you can see looking straight at the camera, so the face is lifted or the head is lifted, so face is pushing straight against all that water, which is putting the brakes on and slowing you down. So try and keep that head position as it was as you're approaching the surface. Hands, okay, so you can see we're just that little bit wriggly here. Just keep those that bit tighter. Think about getting the forearms and the elbows to do the work and the squeezing. As you push forwards on the hands here, you can see them just part. They kind of actually almost push against the water, the palms, which we definitely don't want to do because that's going to slow us down. So allow them to cut through the water. We'll come back to that. Like I've said, keep the hands a little bit further away from the chest. We sometimes look a little bit asymmetric and sort of uneven from one side to the other at points as well. And I think this shows and it links up with what the legs are doing. I know the cameras are perfectly square, but you can see that one leg is a little bit dropped. The left leg is dropped in comparison to the right, and it's not on every stroke, which is why I talk about control, okay? We want to be in charge of every stroke that you're doing. Again, just think about not throwing the head down. Think about pressing the chest down instead, and that is what will help you lift your hips more. Good. Okay, so we've got the side-on view now. So from this angle, you'll see the elbow position, okay? You'll see the undulation. I like that you're completely submerging under the water as we're driving forwards. That's perfect. Keep thinking about doing that. Tighten those legs up at the end. Don't let them twitch or separate like on that one. Think about not pushing, especially that left hand by the looks of it, palm forwards as you drive forwards into streamline. If we look at that slowed down in a little bit more detail now, legs, we do an extra little flick and they lift a little bit too much here. So again, we just lose control of those legs. You'll see now they lift very high, which means we've come off our line a bit. And you didn't do this on the other length, so it might be an anomaly, but we want to aim to be on that yellow line with your whole body there. Great pull down. You're in a really strong position, which is lovely. Just a bit big as you're then trying to send yourself forwards on what is essentially the slowest part of the stroke and the underwater phase here. Just neaten up those legs a little bit. Great on the head position. Keep the hands driving forwards. V position, streamline. Oh, head just popped, so be aware of that. Try and keep that eye line steadier than it's doing at the moment. Again, we're getting fully submerged, which is good, but we do want to see that undulation where the hips actually are higher than the chest, but the hands are also high. So it's similar to flying, that you'd have high hands, low chest, high hips. Okay, and then the feet might have kicked slightly down, which then drops the feet a bit. So you've got that lovely wave travelling forwards through the water, and it cuts through the water better than just a straight line. Okay, ooh, legs, just keep those steady. Elbow position, remember we want to try and squeeze those elbows together in front of our chest. Keep accelerating through the pull like you're doing already. We're always trying to get back to that streamlined position at the front after the recovery. Okay, this is where we would want your arms to be at this point. So you can see there's quite a difference in where your hands would end up being. And what I want you to look at now is as you drive forward, you tend to try and bring your whole hands up and out the water. Whereas what I want you to think about doing is just bringing your thumb through the surface instead, okay? We don't want to get the undulation from what our hands are doing at that point in the stroke. But we do want to then, as we are driving forwards, just catch the surface with a thumb and then drive forwards and down with the hands as you press your chest. Your chest is low and then your hands lift up to high. So you've got high, low, high. Hands, chest, hips. So this is one of the drills that we did, okay? We just focused on the pull at the wall. Okay, initially we just did the squeeze drill where we're doing like a pec deck machine just at the wall, and then we put it into this pull. Okay, so make sure your elbows aren't coming too far back. The aim for this squeeze is to get lift in your stroke. So it gives you the height, so it's going to help your undulation, and it means you can throw that body weight forwards into your next stroke. So without having to use any extra energy, you're going to get more momentum forwards.
Okay, so we've worked on the squeeze drill at the wall, and now we're trying to put that squeeze back into full stroke, well, into your pull. And what we're trying to think about is the shape of the pull. So the hands are going to drive forwards and down at the start. Little fingers go up and out, elbows high, and then squeeze those hands together without having to lift your head to come out of the water to breathe. So there's still quite a little bit of a head lift there. So we're going to challenge that now with a ball under the chin. Okay, so full stroke breaststroke. Thinking about the shape of that pull and trying to use that squeeze to lift yourself up out of the water. That was really good. It's great, keep going. See, this is nice, this is really good. And it just proves that it's all that head lift with more of a habit than a necessity. So if you're getting your elbows high and squeezing your elbows together, your forearms together, catching your water across your whole forearms, rather than pulling your elbows straight back as you pull, it gives you that lift, and you can use your upper body weight, throw yourself forward and add to your undulation. Good, so what we're thinking about now is pushing that chest down as we glide and trying to get our hands higher than our chest and our head as we start the pull. And what that does is push your chest down, pushes the hips up, pushes the feet down at the end, so it gives them that little flick back up, and it adds the undulation into the stroke. It's a little bit flat here, but that's probably because we're thinking about with that ball under the chin as well. But this does look good. I think if you take that ball away, it should feel real smooth. Whole length without losing the ball. Well done.
Well done.
Great job there, Catherine. You had a really, really good session. On that breaststroke, you can just see there's that little pause at the back. I think we are still coming a little bit far back with those elbows. So if we can, it'll feel really small and really short and sharp, that pull. But we want to kind of get used to that feeling. You can go wide, which is nice, but then we want to be fast and not as far back with the elbows. But on both backstroke and breaststroke, really good job, Catherine. I hope you enjoyed the session, and I hope you've got some things to take away and keep working on. But if you've got any questions at all, please let us know, and we hope to see you soon.